Monero Talk is sponsored by Cake Wallet, a trustless, open source wallet that gives you the keys to your crypto. Invoice, donate, and trade your Monero with peace of mind, piece of cake. And by StealthyX, an instant exchange where privacy is a top concern. Go to stealthyx.io to instantly exchange between Monero and 450 plus assets without having to create an account or register and with no limits, making StealthyX a simple way to purchase Monero with crypto anonymously. Monero Talk is also made possible from contributions by viewers and listeners like you, and supporting us is easier than ever by typing in monerotalk.crypto in your monero.com or Cake Wallet send address field to send us a tip.
All right, Sterlin, what's going on, man?
Yo, brother. How's it going on your end? Great here. Looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah. Everything's good. Everything's good. A little hectic. I was in some traffic. You know, fiat things getting in the way. I'm not completely untethered. I don't know about you. I don't know how. Nobody's completely untethered.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
There's always.
I don't know how far you are along in the process, but I still have my umbilical cord on. I haven't completely detached yet.
Yeah, same here. Being that we're both based in the U.S., it's hard to completely detach from the system. But as much as possible, I try to use crypto. But it is definitely a challenge.
Yeah, no, I know you're trying to walk the walk, and you described to many, or you described it very well to many of why we need to move in that direction. I wanted to have you on today because Roger Ver obviously is a hot topic, right? And I saw one of your pinned posts recently. It looks like you had a history with him from back in the day, so you have a good vantage point of really understanding who the guy is. And speaking of trying to detether, right, and walk the walk, Roger was one of the first to do so, if not like the first to actually attempt to achieve that. And he's still trying to detether to this day. He cut the umbilical cord, but they're trying to sew it back on. I'm not exactly sure what the hell's going on with that. But he came out and he gave a talk. He was on Tucker Carlson. Mentioned Monero, mentioned Xano, really doubled down on the M word, which was beautiful to see, right? I've always said that that's kind of the litmus test of whether or not you're really in it for the liberty, right? Are you willing to say that the M word? And he's certainly proven that. I mean, we know Roger's been interested in Monero for a long time, so wanted to bring you on, Sterlin. I think you're the right man for the job to kind of talk about how important this moment is with what we're seeing with Roger, and kind of give us your perspective on who the man is and what's going on and why we should all be riled up about it.
Yeah, brother, absolutely. So I can start with talking about my experience about the man, Roger Ver. Who is he and what is he about as a human being? So a little bit of backstory. I worked with Roger very closely between 2015 all the way up to around 2019. So I spent several years working with Bitcoin.com. I helped open up the news media site for Roger and Bitcoin.com. And then I helped do a lot of advocacy and promotion of Bitcoin.com. And I was there for the scaling debate, scaling wars. We could get into that a little bit. But the point that I want to drive home is that during the time I spent with Roger, I had personal time to sit down with him, to get to know him, to talk to him in person. And one of the things that really inspired me to work with Bitcoin.com and Roger is because of his devotion and his focus on promoting and advocating liberty and voluntarist values. The guy has been a consistent advocate of doing whatever he can to promote more freedom in the world, more liberty in the world. And as a part of his vision, Roger was so dedicated to this that he's given a lot of money to a lot of different libertarian causes. A good amount of people may not know this, but Roger, not single-handedly, there was a lot of people who gave, but he was a very large donor in Ross Ulbricht's trial. So he gave a lot of money to the family and to help support Ross and Lynn and trying to help his defense, right? So Roger is just he's hardcore focused and has been hardcore focused on trying to help people out as much as possible. He's given to a lot of different, and he helps seed the cryptocurrency industry. And he talked about this during the interview with Tucker Carlson. He funded companies like blockchain.com, which was blockchain.info at the time. He also funded Ripple and Kraken as well. So this whole first generation of successful cryptocurrency companies, he funded those out of the
Yeah,
gate.
I think he was even like part of the seed round of Coinbase. I think even too. I think he was. I could be getting that wrong. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, no, it's actually kind of a funny story. I think what ultimately happened, he had a choice he had to make, or he decided that he had to make between funding blockchain.com and Kraken, or sorry, blockchain.com and Coinbase, if memory serves. And he's mentioned, I think, in interviews before that he wishes he would have funded Coinbase, but I don't think he actually pulled the trigger
Okay.
on it.
Oh,
But
okay.
it was
Okay.
like a consideration, right? Because he had an opportunity, but he passed on it and he went with blockchain.com. So I think he missed it, if memory serves, but he did end up funding Kraken. And anyway, my memory could be hazy. Maybe he did have some involvement down the road, but if my memory is usually pretty good, if I don't think I think he missed the bus on that one. But
No, you're probably
point,
right.
yeah, point being is that he did all of this because he was a hardcore support, aside from the libertarian piece, he was a hardcore supporter of Bitcoin in the early days because he had this crypto anarchist and sort of cypherpunk vision that this is freedom money that can be used to take power back from the Federal Reserve and the system and bring it back to the people. So the locus of control changes from the federal government and the system to the person, right? Because now you can be your own bank and you have peer-to-peer currency. You can trade with people for whatever you want without having to worry about going through intermediaries. So you disintermediate other actors where you can be in control. And so that was a component of the libertarian vision as Roger saw it. And just aside from that, the thing as a person that I liked most about him, he was always very honest, very straightforward. And if he wanted to work with you or do something with you, he was always frank about it. And if you wanted to get funded by him, he would always be forthcoming, say, yes, I can do that. No, I can't do this. So he was always just very communicative about his ideas and his goals and his agendas. So I always saw him as an extremely honest and decent person. And he was a real pleasure to work with while I was there at bitcoin.com. And what's happening to him right now, and I know we're going to get into this deeply, is an absolute travesty. And it is really a direct result of his, well, frankly, just his activism, right? The fact that he has done a lot of work for promoting cryptocurrency for freedom. He's been also a hardcore dissident and critic of the government, right, and government activities. Something he mentioned in Tucker Carlson specifically was how the ATF and the what was it, the ATF, who else was involved? Was it the FBI? Whatever, the Branch Davidians in Waco, right, where they basically burned down
Yes.
the building with incendiary tear gas. Of course, they made the claim that it was actually the Branch Davidians who burned it down, but ultimately, that no matter what happened, that was a result of their actions against the compound and against David Koresh, and like 20 plus children, I think, died in that. And he gets very emotional when he talks about these ideas because it's an absolute atrocity.
Yeah,
that happened.
You see it in his face. I mean,
Yeah, that's right.
Not to throw you off track here, but when I first interviewed Roger, that was in 2020, and I went in, I had my my impressions of him from the propaganda that was spread against him. Like, obviously I hadn't completely drunken the Kool-Aid. I knew something was up. I knew the guy. I mean, they used to call him Bitcoin Jesus, right? I saw it in there. We saw what he was doing, and then he got completely pummeled publicly by the Bitcoiners, which became the Bitcoin maxis. And so I always, I wasn't as in it as you were. I was in crypto, but as an outsider. You were behind the curtain. You were working behind the scenes. You were working in these companies. You had that real vantage point. But from my perspective, somebody who they were trying to fool with the propaganda, yeah, even me, somebody who I like to believe is quite resistant to to psyops, was like, this guy, there's something, this guy's whatever. They made him out to be a complete asshole, right? And so I had him on in 2020, and like, before he could, finish his first sentence, I was like, this guy's like a genuine dude, and we start talking, and I really start to understood who he was. I mean, he was a liberty fighter before Bitcoin existed, right? He had gotten caught up in issues with the law because he was such a libertarian, right? This is before crypto. He was living the libertarian life. He was fighting as an advocate for those ideals. They threw him in jail for selling fireworks, right? And I think what it really came down to is he had signs up, right, that said like "fuck the IRS," or I don't even know, right? You probably know better than me, but he had like signage up that was basically giving an FU to the feds, and the gang came for him. And when they did, he went through that experience and he survived it and came out stronger and even more determined and in search for a way to fight back. And when he found Bitcoin, he realized that like, this is the freaking way. This is how we're going to do it. And he realized that sooner than basically anybody that was able to vocalize it. And he has been true to that testament ever since. And so to now look back and realize that there was a hijacking, right? Because here's this guy, Bitcoin Jesus, is telling us, did he get caught up in some silly things? Yeah, I think he did. I don't think, he doesn't have a perfect record. He got manipulated by, some of these other guys like Craig Wright and whatever happened. But I think him as a person, he was always truly looking for the digital cash solution and trying to get that off the ground, whether it was BTC, Bitcoin Cash, Monero, right? And like, he always was true to that vision. And through experimentation and being open-minded, he did get caught up with some of these people. But I think that is because he was such an open-minded guy too, that he was willing to kind of go down these rabbit holes and these avenues. So that's my overall take on Roger, and I think he's definitely a legitimate freedom fighter, more than 99.999% repeating in the Bitcoin land. And for people to not have respect for him in that regard, and to be rooting against him, though, that's the that's the indicator there, right? That's what people should have their eye on, seeing who those people are, and then realizing, okay, those people are not the cypherpunks, are not the crypto anarchists. They absolutely do not care about using this tool for purposes of disrupting the state. They're on a different mission. So I think it's good to realize that too, because you're seeing a lot of that out there, and people should be taking note.
Yeah, great points. A couple of things too. I mean, it's very clear that if you want to radicalize somebody to freedom, just arrest them and throw them in a federal prison, right? And this is what happened with Roger early on. You're correct. He was a target of early what we call lawfare, where they weaponize the legal system to go after people who are activists and who are pissing off the bureaucrats and the kleptocrats and all the nasty people in the government apparatus. And all it was for was selling the wrong size firework over eBay, even though a lot of these companies were selling the similar firework. I think Cabela's is what it was related to online, and that's why they got him into prison sentence. Because it's really a tragedy, because it was his first offense, and they wanted him so bad in prison that he had to come to a plea bargain, and so he wouldn't lose if he went to trial. And it doesn't look like they were willing to negotiate early on. So that's how bad they wanted to send a message and to put him in prison. Of course, during that time, no one really, they weren't paying as much attention to the lawfare side of things like we are now. And of course, what I mentioned earlier, that sent him on a course where he wanted to promote more freedom, right? He doubled down on it. He started pushing forward, and then he found Bitcoin. You told the story very well from that point. And then I think, and just a bit of the story that's interesting, he heard about Bitcoin through another person who's in jail right now as a result of Lawfare, Ian Freeman, right? Because he heard one of their Free Talk Live shows, and they introduced it to him and Mark Edge, and that's how he got into it and started spreading it around the world, and then got into developing it. And another point that's really relevant is, and this is super important, is a lot of people are focused on when number go up, when moon, when Limbo when it comes to Bitcoin right now. It's all about the digital gold use case. So do note that Roger was already a multimillionaire before he even got into Bitcoin. He has his company Memory Dealers and another, like a couple of tech companies where he had already made his riches. And he mentioned actually on I think this might have been the interview with Tucker Carlson, where he had multiple Lamborghinis and he sold them all for Bitcoins. That's how much he believed in the vision. He wanted to just spend the rest of his life promoting freedom through cryptocurrency. So even though he could have just sat and chilled on his millions of dollars and said nothing and just been happy with it. So, but that's a testament to his character.
Yeah.
Right. That's an ode to his character.
Yeah.
It's just it's a massive thing, and it's absolutely beautiful. And that's why we come back to this question of lawfare, or having the system weaponized. It's gotten worse in recent years, and I think this is largely because the cryptocurrency ecosystem in general represents a massive threat to the hegemony of the US dollar, right? Because the US has the most to lose when it comes to massive financial changes in the world, because right now they're able to basically control and puppeteer the world as a result of the dollar being the global reserve currency. So everything hinges on their ability to control that. And if another currency were to rise up and people were to adopt it and embrace it, and it damaged the dollar, they would suffer as a result of that. So I think all of this, plus just their, the bureaucratic need just to control and to puppeteer and to micromanage everybody's lives, is a direct result of that. And so anybody in crypto who pushes back against that agenda, against their modus operandi, well, you're going to see casualties through the conduit of lawfare as a result of that. They've come after people. We've seen this with the Tornado Cash guys, Samurai Wallet guys, Ross Ulbricht, who we mentioned. So Ross is just another unfortunate consequence of this attack on the cryptocurrency ecosystem at large. But I do think that this case, his is going to be one of the largest, and it's really going to highlight these problems, and more and more people are going to pay attention to it. So in that way, maybe there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And I do think, we'll talk more about the case in a minute, but I do think there's a very good chance that Roger's able to get out of this. I've been watching Roger Barnes, I think his name, or is it Robert Barnes? Yeah, the attorney who defended Wesley Snipes in his it was like a tax fraud or evasion case. And he's mentioned multiple times that this case doesn't seem to hold much water. And it's a very clear example of how politics and law can be weaponized against political opponents, rather than people actually intent on breaking laws. Because Roger was very insistent. He knew that he was already a target of the U.S., right? We'd already covered his previous history as an activist. And so he told all of his attorneys that he was working with when he decided to expatriate and to leave the U.S., which is what happened, right? And just a bit of background for anybody listening. So when you try to renounce your citizenship, which is what Roger wanted to do, because he wanted to get the hell out of the U.S., because he didn't feel like this was a place that he could call home with the government watching his every move. But when you try to renounce your citizenship to the U.S., it creates a fictitious tax sale, right? Or a fictitious sale of all your property and all your assets. And then you have to pay tax on that fictitious sale. So anyway, he went through the process of doing that, which is not easy, costs money, hire attorneys, and then of course all of his assets is a lot of money to pay taxes on without actually selling anything. And the evidence is already out.
And to be expected to properly assess what that value should be, giving your best efforts, where you've hired accountants, you've hired attorneys, and you're trying to abstractly come up with some number that equals what the value would be if you sold all of that thing at that moment in time, when you own such a large portion of that thing, where you're going to crash the market, and for that to not be allowed to be held into account of assessing the value is complete fraud on their part. And it's just coming up with an excuse to throw somebody in jail.
Yeah, and it's wild because, and this is something I see online a lot, where people are they're just jumping to conclusions, and they're saying that, oh, he didn't pay his taxes, he has to pay his fair share. Aside from the fact that taxation is absolute theft to begin with, right, on foundational first principles, Roger was still trying to do the right thing because he didn't want those guys to be easily be able to come after him. And get this, they were in discussions, him and his attorneys, with the IRS to pay whatever they claim was owed. And apparently they didn't ever come back with a clear answer on what he actually owed. And we can see how difficult that would be, to the point that you alluded to, in the very early days of Bitcoin. So for one, even if he would have sold, in theory, all of his Bitcoin holdings, he would have completely fucking crashed the market, right? This is like circa 2014. There's no way. And then, so trying to figure that out and add calculations, and this is also a regulatory environment for Bitcoin that was non-existent at the time. All these rules from the Treasury Department and the IRS have come down since then, but that was definitely the Wild West in terms of your crypto holdings. So it would have been very difficult to ascertain that. You would have had to get all the attorneys involved to try to figure it out, and I think they attempted to do their best, but still, they, in good faith, he was trying to actually say, what do I owe you? I'll gladly pay it to you, right? It's like
Yeah.
that wasn't an issue. So
Now, actually, maybe you know the details on this, but how did it get to this level so fast and in such a way where he wasn't even given the opportunity to fix the issue? Or was it that he was, and then he's like, no, I paid. That's what I believe it was. Leave me the fuck alone, and I'm not giving you more money. Like, how did it get to the point where, now they're, indicting him and putting him through a legal process? Why wasn't there a back and forth there, a negotiation? Are you familiar with how that all went down?
yeah, and that's what I'm trying to get at. There was actually, but there was like
Okay.
an ongoing back and forth, like up
Okay.
until the moment when they indicted him. It was like a sealed indictment from a grand jury, right, where he didn't even know until he was arrested in Spain, where the dude just walked up to him and said,
Right.
"Are you Roger Ver?" And he was trying to figure out who the guy was, and then he's like, "Come with me," showed a badge, and you're under arrest. At that exact moment,
he paid. He had made his payments. Were
correct.
they then
Yes.
requesting more money, of like an amount, like, you owe us this much
Yes.
more, and then he was just kind of,
Correct.
instead of paying, he was just continuing to argue.
No, so here's the thing. This is how I understand it, right? And don't quote me on this, but this is what the documentation suggests, and all the other interviews that I've watched on the subject. They were claiming that he owes more, but they never gave an exact amount. They couldn't articulate what he actually. They basically were just saying he owes more, and as far as I know, they were in that back and forth.
Okay.
And that was ongoing for a while, right? And then they decided to indict him and go after him anyway. But there's a couple of points that I want to make that I don't want to gloss over. One is that to get any extra information with him, and this is a huge miscarriage of justice and is antithetical to the Constitution in the U.S., they raided his attorney's office,
Crazy.
breaking attorney-client privilege in the U.S. That is not something that's acceptable. That's like certainly taboo legally and
Yeah, that's like
socially.
that's a Supreme Court case right there. I
Yeah,
mean,
just
to figure out, like, why in this instance were they able to go around attorney-client privilege? I don't even know what the precedent is there, like, in what other scenarios that's been done. Like, that's
right.
insane.
Yeah, and this is, again, watching attorneys talk about this, and just for the record, I think everybody knows I'm not an attorney, so this is just from hearsay and knowledge.
I actually am, but not practiced enough to.
Oh yeah, I
give
think I remember you
insights into
mentioned that at some point.
a New York attorney. But go ahead.
Cool. Yeah, no, so that is, no matter how you slice it, extremely egregious, and that really speaks to the lawfare component of this and the desperation on the side of the Department of Justice in the U.S., where they just want to, if they want to go after you, they're going to bypass all the rules, all the due process rules, all the common rules of law that we would anticipate as being fair and just, and bypass all that. So one is instead of going through the tax court, right, which is typically what would look like was going to happen, and then instead of like getting all the information directly from the attorney and from Roger and requesting it, they decided just to raid the attorney's office, hold the people there. I think some of the folks that involved in that law firm actually quit, according to some documents that I saw.
Wow.
So that it was a huge kind of thing. And I think that happened in 2018, if memory serves. And by the way, anybody who's interested in seeing this, plus if they want to sign the petition for Roger's release,
Yes,
you go to freerogernow.org, and that's where you can find.
freerogernow.org. I'll try to
And
bring it up.
yeah,
Go
and
ahead.
where I learned most about this is his attorneys for the case recently filed a motion to dismiss all the charges, and so everything that I'm talking about is certainly in there. And there's another piece of this where they're actually just claiming, and I think this is a rightful thing to claim, is that the exit tax, for one, is just completely unconstitutional and not supposed to be part of the Constitution anyway. I think it's definitely seems like a bold legal claim, but I would personally agree with that and think that that's complete insanity to try to exit tax. But anyway, it's all in the motion to dismiss.
I mean, I think income tax is
just in general.
constitutional too.
Good point. That reminds
but,
me. I mean, the federal income tax was only supposed to be a temporary measure
Yeah.
during wartime, right? It wasn't supposed. But
Yeah.
that's the thing with governments. Anytime you give an inch and they take a mile, then laws don't just go away. If they have power, they're going to consolidate it and continue to use it.
The ratchet effect. Let me bring this up. Up. Yeah, I got to make sure I signed the petition. I don't know if I did. I think I know I signed. I think shit. I got to make sure I got to sign that. Guys, do it. Sign it. It takes like a minute, right? You just fill out your name, I guess, and just hit enter. This is well worth it, right? If we're gonna do any type of advocacy, and this one is well worth it. And I think it could actually make an impact here because we got Trump coming into office, the new administration. There's no reason why Roger doesn't check all the boxes as being somebody that should be basically given a pardon, given clemency from the weaponization of the federal government against individuals for fighting liberty. He's in that list. Ross Albright is obviously part of that list. Roger is right there. So I think it will happen. But yeah, I think it's everybody should sign the thing, keep spreading the word. Obviously, we saw it go nuclear the other day when he was on what's his name, Tucker Carlson's show. I mean, I think it was like over 2.5 million views or something. That was amazing to see. But yeah, we got to keep pushing it out there. I think. What do you think? Do you think Trump will step in? His administration will step in and do something?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I'll say, before we even talk about Roger, Trump has already promised in a number of high-profile public conferences that he would pardon Ross, or he would commute Ross's sentence on day one when he gets into office. So, assuming that he keeps that promise, there's no reason why he can't also come in and pardon Roger as well, and perhaps some of these other folks who have been a victim of the system. Now, I'm, as a crypto anarchist and a voluntarist, I'm extremely skeptical of any kind of political solution. I'm also skeptical of politicians keeping their promises, but I do see there is some reason for Trump to keep his promises and maybe to take it a step further, because he's also now been a victim. Assuming all the stories are true, he's also been a victim of lawfare, right? As well, when they raided his Mar-a-Lago office, right, and then they have tried to convict him on election-based charges. Yeah, so I think
he's a victim of weaponized federal government, weaponized justice system.
That's right. So the hope is that has changed his mind, and he was already a proponent of, I'll say, generally more freedom. Trump is definitely not a libertarian. I definitely don't think that he's going to be the savior of any of us who are anarchists and want more freedom in the world. But as far as keeping his promise and maybe pardoning some of these folks, I do have high hopes that will turn out to be true. Now, there is another thing that I wanted to mention about Roger's case. I said there were two things. One is the breaking of attorney-client privilege, which is just a huge red flag for people. The other is that this happened, Roger's indictment and arrest happened about a week after he published his book, Hijacking Bitcoin, and then started to do a book tour and talking about these ideas. And one of the key points of that book, aside from it being hijacked from the, from a developer perspective and people wanting to turn it to digital gold, there's some evidence and some ideas that they put forward that there were intelligence agencies involved in working with Bitcoin developers and helping to hijack this. So I don't think it's a coincidence at all. And other people like the co-author Steve Patterson has said this as well, that they're probably specifically coming after him as a result of vindictiveness for promoting this book, plus all the activism that he's done in the past. So where there's smoke, there's fire. There's all this political activism and all this. Also, the fact that he directly has funded all these companies and all these organizations in crypto and libertarianism makes him a prime target for a lawfare attack vector. So it seems if you're looking at this from our vantage point, just being libertarians and voluntarists, and you see everything that Roger has done, you can, I think, very quickly surmise that this wasn't just a typical tax case. The matter of fact, I don't think, at least I've never seen before, where they've gone after somebody who has attempted to renounce their citizenship for not paying. This is a novel circumstance that hasn't happened before, as far as I know.
We got some big names. Obviously, Tucker Carlson, like we said. This lawfare isn't really about taxes. It's about control. VAIR has long challenged both permanent Washington and centralized finance, and they hate him for it. They see him as a threat. Charlie Kirk. We want to see President Trump get rid of lawfare here, as he was once a victim of one. So a pardon, lifting of charges, whatever it takes, it's time for a clean slate and to free Roger. Stella Assange, Brett Weinstein. So I mean, it's in the circuit. It's in the Liberty circuit. I think we'll continue to see people in that sphere talking about it, and it's gonna get out there. I mean, Joe Rogan, I could see Joe Rogan. I don't know if he's been mentioning it yet, but I could see that happening. So that's good to see. But we got to do our part, guys. This is how the grassroots works, right? So I'm actually excited because it looks like it's working. It looks like the efforts are paying off. Aaron Day is doing an amazing job. He was, from what I'm seeing, he was really kind of the impetus of organizing the effort, getting the word out, and now he's got real momentum behind it. So good job, Aaron Day. And obviously Sterlin, I've seen you doing a lot on the effort as well. So thanks to you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really clear that if they can do this to Roger, and they keep doing this to people in our community, in our ecosystem, they can do it to anybody. They can decide to come after whoever they want. If we don't have pushback, at least at the beginning legally, right, and help, like you said, from the grassroots perspective, where everybody is speaking up against this. Really, it's a complete miscarriage of everything that's dignified and decent in our world. So I'm so happy to see the response. And there's even people who are on who may really loathe Roger for his particular views, and they don't agree that Bitcoin was hijacked, and maybe they're maximalists. There have been a good segment of those folks coming out in defense of Roger, and I like our friend Juan Galt is one of them, who's been a Bitcoin maximalist for a while, and he was even at Monero Topia, and he's spoken up for Roger. So I do think this has a way of bringing a lot of our factionalism, like breaking apart some of the factionalism and bringing people together in defense of Roger, because we realize that this is not okay, and we need to do whatever we can to support him. And signing the thing is one of the minor things that we can do, but talking about it publicly and online and being as loud as possible about it, I think is really important. As me personally, I empathize greatly with Roger, right? Because you're probably familiar with my background. I got arrested for possession of MDMA and cocaine, right? Almost went to prison for a long, long time, but got lucky and dodged a bullet that quote unquote crime wasn't federal. So I know what it's like to have to be processed through the criminal justice, or shall we say criminal injustice system.
Scary.
So
Scary stuff.
it's terrifying, because it doesn't take much for those guys to completely ruin your life. And even if you do go through that system and you get a non-guilty verdict, if you went to trial, in a lot of ways it still ruins your life, because there's reputational damage, even if you're innocent. There's still the idea lingering in people's heads that you could be a problem or a threat. So going through that system is like having a scarlet letter. It's not a great thing, but I do think a lot of people's minds are changing. They're starting to see the system for what it is. They're realizing that the emperor really doesn't have any clothes. And now I think we're going to have more propulsion and more momentum toward greater change, and starting to generate more freedom around, because of all the stuff that's happening that's just completely insane, right? From a rational and logical and decent human's perspective.
Right. It's trying. People are starting, even beyond crypto, right? Just normal people are starting to look at this and be like, wait, what? Why are they going after this guy for this? That doesn't seem right, right? Like, there's not too many people, if they hear this story, they would be rooting for the government. Obviously, they're trying to frame it like he's some guy who won a windfall and he's stealing all his gains. But I think anybody who takes a decent look at it will realize right away that's just not the case. And like I said at the outset, I do think it's important to step back and look at those who are supporting this and those who are against it. Like you pointed out some names there, and just like Max Kaiser is somebody on the other side of this, right? He's one of the biggest names in Bitcoin right now. He is one of the current Bitcoin emperors, right? Like him and Saylor. I don't know if has Saylor made any comment.
Not that I've seen so far.
Yeah, he's gonna keep his mouth shut. He's not an idiot. He already put his foot in his mouth with basically saying it doesn't matter if you hold your own keys, right? Basically saying that crypto anarchists are a bunch of people wasting their time playing around.
Bro, that gets
go ahead.
I was gonna get on a soapbox. I think that kind of rhetoric gets me so fired up, because it like that whole train of thought speaks to Roger's idea to begin with. Even if it's not technologically hijacked, it's socially hijacked and socially engineered for sure, because that was not the language that the original folks, and I was in there early on in crypto and in Bitcoin specifically, we were talking about cypherpunk values, crypto anarchism, peer-to-peer cash for the world, disintermediating the banks, freeing the individual. And now that those talking points have got completely inverted, where now all these guys are talking about crypto anarchism, crazy crypto, Michael Saylor's words, crazy crypto anarchists. They're also saying we need to keep all of our Bitcoin on custodial exchanges. We need to have more KYC, more know your customer. It's the complete opposite. So you can see very clearly, if you just pay attention, that Bitcoin is hijacked from that perspective, because all these guys have to do is control the rails, right? The on and off ramps, get people to continue custodying their funds. And this is also to Aaron Day's point, where all this does is pave the way for a CBDC and a controlled unit of account that these guys can surveil and watch and keep tabs on every step of the way. So we have a very clear indication that the direction that that Bitcoin and the rest of the ecosystem has went is and this is stuff I talk about all the time too, right? It's antithetical to the original cypherpunk ethos. And that's why I think we're starting to see a resurgence of people coming out and talking about the original use case. We actually just did a cypherpunk space recently, and we had quite a few people show up, because there's a realization that these values are important. I mean, Doug, I spend quite a bit of time on X, right? And when all these spaces that crop up are just talking about, oh, win 100K Bitcoin right before it hit 100K, and it's all about the casino and the value and win number go up. That is not what this ecosystem was originally about. It was about having a liberatory technology that could unfetter us from the system as it stands. And I think those values are going to come back into the limelight as all this stuff is happening, right? And I think it is. And I think that's a beautiful thing and a good thing.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, as you know, that's what Monerotopia is all about, right? Like, and this year was bigger than ever, better than ever, because we're kind of reaching a fever pitch with it. There's the Bitcoiners are coming back. You know, those that are the true cypherpunks, crypto anarchists that were in it for the right reasons. They're realizing and they're walking away from the BTC maximalism at this point, and they're like, you know, fuck that, fuck Michael Saylor. We gotta fix this. And so it is exciting to see that, at least. And I think that's gonna go. I think that's gonna go a long way. I think the tide will eventually start to turn, because that's how this tech was always going to play out, right? If this invention worked as intended, the game theory was that eventually it was going to work. It was going to grab hold. As long as the people use it, we win, right? And so we got diverted with Bitcoin. There were some weaknesses there that allowed basically governments to co-opt it. Could it have been saved? 100% it could have. I mean, the way you know, it was open source. You could have improved it. They tried to make improvements, but it got socially and politically co-opted to the point where design decisions weren't about making it digital cash that governments can't fuck with, but making it something that integrated into the current system that allows it to go up in value as much as possible in fiat terms. That's what it's currently being designed towards. And that was the co-opting of it. That's how it got co-opted. And that meme now controls Bitcoin. And so until you change that meme, Bitcoin will continue to be that and won't evolve into digital cash. And so thankfully, you know, the idea is much bigger than just Bitcoin itself. And at the end of the day, it is open source and people can recreate the versions that are unstoppable. Because I do believe theoretically something like that can be created and will flourish and will work. I think Satoshi realized it as well, and it's now been tweaked and turned to the point where we are ahead of them in terms of the tech and the way encryption works. We have an advantage, right? They can't beat math. They can't use bombs against our math, against our code. All they could try to do is socially take things over and change a product and change a project politically. And as long as there's enough of us that realize that and we control it politically, there's no way of infiltrating and stopping true digital cash.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's, you know, talking about the solution space for everything that's happening at the moment. Yeah, the technologies that we need to exist that support our values and support freedom already do exist right now. Obviously, we have Monero, Xano. You still have things like Bitcoin Cash if you want just pure peer-to-peer cash, but if you want privacy and anonymity, you have that as well. So the technology is here. All these guys did was delay the inevitable for a bit of time, right? That's all they can do because they can't completely subvert all the technology. You can't stop decentralization. Like you said, you can't stop math, right? You can't bomb math into oblivion.
No.
So what's going to happen eventually is people are going to continue to adopt this. The technology is going to continue to grow. And ironically, even though Bitcoin ended up going the wrong direction away from the crypto anarchist ethos, the idea of it still remains buried within it. And anybody who starts getting used to Bitcoin, that gives them opportunities to look at the ecosystem at large. They come into contact with these ideas, and maybe they don't, but they still use something like Monero or Xano eventually. Then that opens up the ecosystem to more peer-to-peer transactionality in the way that we envisioned it, where people aren't just custody. That's one. I have to say, this is one of the key things that we talked about very early on: is not your keys, not your crypto. A very simple idea that just means that we want to embrace the peer-to-peer mentality and mindset where we're doing transactions with each other directly without having those intermediaries. And that's just a huge step toward liberating ourselves financially and embracing financial responsibility as well.
I mean, that's the real weapon against the state system, is this tool that allows us to create our own parallel economy outside of the state-controlled system. That's the real thing, right? The creating something that basically can't be devalued. You know, that there's power there, right? It takes away the ability of governments to print money. So there's definitely value there, right? That's a tax. Obviously, that's a very, very real tax against all of us. But there's the economy itself, and that's where they have even more of a stranglehold, and that's what they really don't want to lose, right? Is this ability to control everybody's transactions, surveil everybody's transactions, see what everybody's doing with their money, and take their pound of flesh based on those transactions, and be a part of that economy. What terrifies them is an economy outside of their system, because then that's how you ultimately win, right? That's how you greatly weaken the state apparatus in the most effective way possible. And that's why Ross Ulbricht, obviously, I mean, that did that for the first time in a very big way with large numbers. It was an economy outside of their economy, and that's what terrified them. Not even so much of what was being sold on it, but the fact that you had this large economy outside of theirs that they weren't controlling. And that's what they feared with Roger himself, right? Because that's what he really represents. That's what Ross represents, and that's what crypto is supposed to represent. That is what this is all about. There's other things we can do with it, but that is the core value proposition of crypto. That is what it was invented for.
Yeah, what you reminded me too, the vision that we're ultimately realizing with the incursion of strong anonymity safeguarding technologies is what Samuel Edward Konkin III wrote about in his book, The New Libertarian Manifesto, where he talks about this idea of agorism and counter economics, where when you have the mass creation of a black and gray circular economy, and you have horizontal grassroots trade networks where people are doing peer-to-peer exchanges outside of the state apparatus, that is usurping power away from that apparatus over time, right? Because it takes their ability away to tax those people, and it takes the power of money away from them and puts it back into the hands of the people. So this is a Konkin-esque vision, and this is the same thing that, you're right, Ross Ulbricht tried to realize, and in a way did realize it, because with the creation of the Silk Road, he actually caused more interest. He grew Bitcoin, the Bitcoin ecosystem, because it was one of the first major marketplaces where people were transacting Bitcoin, and it was created and grounded on a black-gray circular market, right? Most people were doing mainly transactions in cannabis on the Silk Road.
Right.
And by the way, for anybody who doesn't know, just a tad bit of background info on Ross. So Ross Ulbricht, it is I say the alleged founder and contributor to the Silk Road. The Silk Road was the first darknet market, and Ross ultimately got caught and charged with engaging in an organized criminal conspiracy, and then I think they had some wire fraud charges and some drug transaction charges. There's a bunch of charges, like a laundry list of charges, and he ended up getting a double life sentence plus 40 years in prison. And of course, recently Trump has promised, like I mentioned earlier, to commute his sentence on his first day, because he realizes that was an attack on the ecosystem. That was definitely lawfare. That was weaponization of the legal system to put Ross into prison. And there's been a lot of hard work on everyone's part to try to get him out. And of course, this plays directly into Roger, because as I mentioned earlier too, he's funded his original defense, and has since then helped Ross's mom, Lynn, to fight for that, for getting Ross out eventually, and fighting against that miscarriage of justice.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Guys, we have 420 live viewers right now. One of my favorite numbers. Guys, like and share all these things we're talking about, right? This idea that we need this meme to respread in crypto land. The true meaning of crypto, what its purpose is. I personally think we're gaining strength right now. It seems like there's momentum. The maximalism, I think it's hit a peak, right? With the 100K, obviously Bitcoin can keep going up as governments get more involved in it. But I think kind of it's hit a peak in terms of people realizing that the BTC maxis are just out for themselves, and they're just trying to make a buck, right? And what crypto is true for those that are looking now, all right, where do I find the real thing? They're realizing that it does exist. We just need to grow our numbers. Like and share this, retweet it. People could be finding this show right now for the first time. They could be, instead of trading Dogecoin or whatever meme coin they're fucking around with right now, maybe they accidentally click on this and they're like, wait a minute, why are these guys like so hyped up on Liberty? And next thing you know, they too are into crypto for digital cash purposes. That, like, everybody should be into it for at least those purposes. Anybody who's against those ideas, you're just on the wrong side. What are you doing here? And you will lose. You will lose too. That's the thing. Yeah. So I just want to reiterate that. I do see some good chats coming in here. Lord Gaines tip 25 cents. Love what you're doing with the show. And XMR Bazaar, thanks for the work you're doing. Thank you, man. Thank you for the tip. I was starting to wonder if XMR chat is working. Guys, send your tips in xmrchat.com/Monero Talk. Once again, this is how we win. We got to use it. You don't need to send me $10. Send me 10 cents. Send me 1 cent. Let's just get those Monero transaction counts going. Get it up. Sterlin, man, that brings me to kind of just like a practical question that I ask people all the time, right? Like, so what do we need to do, right? I'm saying we need to obviously spread this meme. What are some other actions we can do? How do we get the word out beyond those that already do understand this? We're saying maybe this Roger case can be, help be that thing that opens the door, right? Everybody would be concerned about, wait a minute, I have no attorney-client privileges anymore. What the hell is that all about? Like that could be the wedge, right? People realizing that this liberty fighter is just being is under attack. But what else can we do to get into the mainstream sphere where we can get normies, for lack of a better word, not trying to insult people, but we could get those normal people to start caring enough about these concepts where they're like, oh, okay, I want to go use crypto because it prevents governments from surveilling my transactions and whatnot, and for like actually taking action and understanding that there's value in living that life, even if it may be maybe slightly more difficult at this point, but realizing it's worth the effort because of all the value you'll get out of it. How do we break into that, man?
Yeah, I think the first thing is this goes back full circle to the very first thing we talked about, and that's trying to detach yourselves from the financial system as much as possible. Like we still struggle to do that for a lot of reasons, and I think a lot of us do. But I just want to give some indication that there are people out there who are living solely on crypto, and they've figured out a way. So for one, I recommend following my buddy Joe Valenzuela's channel on X. It's at the Desert Links, I think is his username. And he's a big proponent of teaching people how to just live off of crypto, right? And because if you're living off of crypto and you've detached yourself from the system, you're already promoting what we're trying to promote. And actually, you're creating those black and gray circular economies that we're talking about. So, and like I said, I try to use crypto as much as possible. I constantly carry it around and use it when I can. So detaching probably just like us, you guys won't be able to do it fully and completely, but to start moving your life in that direction is great. And the further along that you can get, that's fantastic. One of the things I do personally, just another thing that it's an action. It's a bit different from trying to contact the mainstream, but I'm hugely involved in the parallel society movement. So there's all these some organizations like Praxis has actually talked about the network state or the parallel society movement as the cryptocurrency endgame, where we start creating these societies outside that run in parallel to the nation state system as a continuation of helping to break down those systems, in the sense that it makes, so if you have alternative governance models running in alternative societies, that forces governments to compete on another plane, right? Aside from currency, now you have a governance competition component. So that's one of the things that I love too, is just trying to do the exit and build thing, right? Or to build systems within the system that fight back. So those are a couple of ideas of what you can do to start pushing this forward. And in context to what we're talking about, the most important simple thing you can do is simply sign the petition for Roger and then talk to people about it online and to sound the alarm bells. So that's really important.
Good points. Let me ask you. I don't know if I ever got your take on this. What do you think of this? Obviously Monero getting delisted. We talk about it, how it's a good thing. It shows that it actually works as intended. Governments fear it. But do you think it would? Is it better or worse for Monero adoption? The fact that there's pressure on centralized exchanges and it's being delisted. Maybe it bottomed out in terms of the amount of delistings that will happen. I do not know. Maybe we'll start to get relisted. Should we be fighting for that? Let me hear your answer before I give you my take. But what do you think about that? I think it's an important topic.
Yeah, I think frankly it's a good thing overall, because what it does is this is what happened with Bitcoin to begin with, right? It's not easy to try to create a currency, right? Imagine the permissionless nature of Bitcoin in the early days. You go and imagine going to ask a regulator, hey, Mr. Regulator, I developed this currency and I want to start passing this around. So not only are you going to get laughed out of the office, but then if it actually works, someone's going to come to your doorstep, they're going to arrest you and take you to jail. But if they knew who Satoshi was, they would take him to prison. So these situations where there's governmental based bottlenecks that disallow people from easily innovating, right? It forces people to find a way to innovate around that, to create freedom. So I think the pressure that governments have put on Monero by having all these custodial exchanges delisted creates a great opportunity for us to be able to innovate in the peer-to-peer space, and to give people opportunities to use it and to embrace it and to adopt it on that level, which I think is what we need anyway. We don't need people using the traditional rails and the custodial banks, etc. So I think mass adoption on a grassroots level with Monero or Xano or whatever the anonymity enhancing coin is absolutely fantastic. I mean, is it really mass adoption if it's just custodied and really owned by Coinbase or by Kraken or by Michael Saylor or whoever it is? I would say that's antithetical to the kind of mass adoption that we're talking about as a peer-to-peer electronic money system.
Yeah, I agree. It makes it anti-fragile, right? It forces us to build out the tools that we need for Monero to work outside of the fiat system. That being said, I do think having bridges into the fiat, to the normie world, is important, because that's how we bring in new users, right? And I always argued, like, if we want, if somebody had to use a centralized exchange to get their crypto, which is what most people do, by far the majority, like even the cypherpunks out there, I'm sure a lot of them have accounts with centralized exchanges, or had them at one point in time. And so it's a way for people to obtain crypto, and I always kind of argued, if you're forced to get your crypto on exchange, the best crypto you could possibly get on exchange would be Monero, because at least when you pull it off, you're not tracked and traced thereafter. So it's like, if people have to get into crypto through centralized exchanges, I would want to see them get into crypto through Monero, not through Litecoin, not through Dogecoin, not through Bitcoin, which are taking off the exchange, and then you start to have a trail. What would be best is if they're pulling their Monero off, just like taking cash out of a bank. And yes, will the government know that this guy bought Monero and that guy bought? Yeah, they will. But at least now they're able to kind of run off into crypto land, and without a trail. And from there, yeah, sure, they can get into shitcoins and Bitcoin, whatever it may be. But strategically, it makes more sense to want that to happen, I think, even from a crypto anarchist standpoint. If we want to grow this outside economy, we want people getting into it through a bridge where they're not leaving a trail behind. That's kind of my take on it. And I think we would see numbers really go up if more people had access to Monero. When I say numbers go up, price, but just usage as well. I mean, I've been in Monero for quite some time, and I know a lot of people in New York. I ran for Congress here in New York. People kind of know me as like a guy who knows things about crypto and Monero. And when people ask when people ask me how do I get Monero, it's not an easy answer. They're like, well, I have Coinbase, I use it all the time. Da, da, da. So why don't I see it on there? Well, you don't see it on there because it was delisted, but that's actually a good thing. It's great that it's delisted. Oh, okay. It's great that it's, and maybe some of them will pick up on that. But the fact is that they can't just go on their phone and click a button and grab some. That keeps a lot of people out of Monero. So I don't know. How do you feel about that? Like, how do we ignore that clear advantage there?
Yeah, I mean, I see the merits in your argument, and I think there's a lot of people who that might be their door to getting into Monero, and also into any privacy coin for that matter, and then having it grow as a result of that. I think clearly the reality that we face is that's going to be very difficult because it's just going to continue to get deplatformed, and people involved in it are going to continue to get debanked, and exchanges are they're going to have higher, or they're going to have lower risk tolerances for privacy tokens. But I would 100% agree with your perspective if we could find a way to allow that to happen in a way that works, right, where the exchanges can actually take it on and it doesn't get immediately de-risked or debanked, because that we can never realize that vision if this scenario keeps cropping up. But I will say this, there is another thing that we kind of can do that is maybe a bit of a middle ground. So I don't personally use any exchanges, and I'm lucky because I work in the space and I can get paid in different types of crypto, right?
Yeah,
So
I don't touch exchanges either, right? But
so.
for the normies, yeah, I have Monero that comes in, and then I have Monero that goes out.
Yeah, so all I'm saying is, even if you're a normie, you can learn about crypto, and then you can try to do work and accept crypto as payment, and boom, you're in the system, right?
Of course.
And even if you take something other than Monero, because a lot of people aren't going to do transactions in Monero for whatever reason, they're scared. You can very easily exchange that token into another. Of course, there's a bit of a learning curve around that, but I do think I mean, this is a huge part of what we're trying to do. If we have a peer-to-peer economy, having people get paid in crypto opens up an opportunity for them to engage in peer-to-peer transactions on a market, even if it's a black or gray market. That's one thing, but I think getting paid in it is a nice way to pop your crypto cherry if you're a normie. I mean, one of the first things I did when I got into Bitcoin, the reason that I got excited about it was because I went to PorkFest, right? I bought some, but then I used it to buy goods from the vendors at PorkFest. So I realized its utility and use case right away. And I think people have to just get it and start using it to be able to do that, and getting paid in it is just another way to go about it. Again, Doug, I don't disagree with the overall merit of your argument for mass adoption in anonymity coins like Monero. I just think we're in a difficult situation to realize that with the political situation. But maybe when Trump comes into office, maybe there's more opportunity for people to relist Monero. Who knows how it'll play out?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm kind of bringing the idea up again, because I think it's different times now with Trump coming into office. I think maybe it's not as crazy to think we could start getting Monero relisted, and I do think there's pushback on that in the Monero community. I totally get the arguments of, if we're not on exchanges, fuck them. This place is dead anyway. Why do we need them, right? Like we could go that route, and I don't think it is cope. I think there's it makes us stronger. It allows us to build outside of their system 100%. But I think if we did have the ability to kind of politically sway and get, change things here in the US, make it a more Monero friendly country, it would benefit Monero. If New York became a pro Monero state, I think, people might be like, what? That's great. I don't think that's I think that's a great thing. And what we're doing is we're giving normies access to this liberating tool. They're going to eliminate cash. Cash will no longer exist in society. It's not just about us being able to use it among each other. It's about giving it to the rest of society so they can benefit from these freedom tools, and they need access to it to get it. And that's why I bring it up. And I think it's actually controversial in the Monero community. There's like a whole subset that would be like, right, like I'm probably gonna they'll probably write me comments on this video, like why do you want to bend your knee to the centralized exchanges and da 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 da. I think there's good argument to be made for why we would want to see Monero to continue to be listed on centralized exchanges. Yes, we have Sarai coming up. Yes, you could use Havino. Yes, obviously, I want people to go on XMR Bazaar and sell goods and services for Monero. Not that is the way 100%, but that's like second order stuff. We need people to just get a little bit of this in their hands too, and I think we should push for it, and now might be the time.
Yeah, and Doug, just for the audience's potential use case, there are some central exchanges you can still, can't you still purchase it on Kraken if memory serves?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's
You
that.
can, but Kraken is not in New York. Kraken is not in New York.
Yeah,
New York.
New York is shit for crypto in general. Like,
yeah,
overall.
I know. I mean, we have the bit license here.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of getting involved in that politically, and obviously I ran for office here in New York in 2020, but I'm thinking of maybe trying to put some efforts towards, I don't know, maybe even getting rid of the bit. Let's get rid of the bit license in New York. I see things moving, much more towards the Republican libertarian way here in New York. There's definitely been a wave. I think now could be the time with Trump in office. There'll be a new governor. There'll be a governor's race coming up here in New York. I could see a Republican potentially winning that for the first time in a very long time. And I think to have that on your platform, that we want to completely reverse New York, turn it back into the financial capital of the world by making it the digital cash capital of the world. Cash was always king in New York. New York was always known as being a place where you could get anything you wanted with cash. Bring that back, and we'll watch that'll be part of the reflourishing of New York. And I think it's a good time to perhaps like go down that road. I don't know. Obviously you're much more of an agorist than I am. I am in many ways. That's where I want to get to, but I also I also think we fight with the tools we have. We have the cypherpunk tools, we have the crypto anarchist tools, right? Which is Monero and moving everybody towards opting out. But we also do have the political tools that we can use to try to change the system as it currently exists. I always describe it as digging a tunnel from both ends, right? We might as well be digging from the other side.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I don't see the political solution as being that viable, because I don't really get into it in detail, because I personally I just see this as a different strategy, right? Where it's a means to an end. It's just not my personal strategy, but I don't have a huge dog in the fight. I do want to mention just briefly about bit license in New York, of kind of a funny thing that happened as a result. So the guy who created that, who helped draft that legislation, Ben Lawsky, I believe is his name, he actually helped create bit license, right? The legislation for it and the implementation for it in New York. And then he went on and started a consulting firm where he took money to so he ended up getting rich off I don't know about rich, but he ended up making money off of his own drafted legislation, which is super corrupt in my opinion, where you can help draft legislation and then help people, quote unquote, get the license as a consultant. That seems rather fucked up to me. So this is just how the broken system of currying favors and shit works, and that's what
it's the revolving door of regulators in the private sector.
That's right, where they bounce back and forth, and then they can profit off of their activities from one sector by moving to another one. Yeah, it's a real kind of a shit show when it comes down to it. But yes, I'm not, back to your point, I'm not gonna be super toxic like some of these folks who may be in the community who are antagonistic toward these ideas. I think if you can try them and you have some faith or hope that they can work and you can make change actually happen, well then by all means go for it. I think a lot of us who have probably given up on a political solution, a lot of us are like Derek, for instance, who's a good friend of mine, Derek Bros, has focused on the notion of exit and build, right, where he's actually for the most part left the US and went to Mexico, more hospitable jurisdictions, not only for crypto, but just living without having the government come and get you at any moment. That's one of the things that I like about traveling so much too, is like when I'm in the US, this is like the homeland of police raids and no-knock raids on people's houses, and other places in the world that's not near as prolific as a thing that happens, right? Where you don't have this police state that constantly comes after you. Like in Mexico, for instance, yes, it has a ton of problems. There's a lot of corruption, but it's they don't have the infrastructure. They don't have the police state. There's not like a culture of no-knock raids unless you're like a high-end cartel leader or something like that. And the most part, you don't have to fear that that's going to happen just any given moment. And so that's one of the reasons why I like the exit and build, parallel society, establishment movement, and those kind of things. So I say if you have hope that you can politic and make change in the system here, by all means do that if that's what you want to do. But then there are also those of us who have other solutions, and we're trying to figure out things elsewhere, right?
Of
So
course.
that's all I'll say.
I mean, most of my energy is focused on the opting out side. That's what XMR Bazaar is. You know, that's what the Nodo project is. That's what Monero Topia is. That's where all my energy goes, because like Roger Ver, I know that this is the best shot, the best shot we have at landing the largest punch, right? So that's where I focus all my energy. That being said, I think we're leaving things on the table if we don't also fight the battle on other fronts where you know there might be weaknesses and we can penetrate. It's going to take a long time to get us to the point where we could essentially completely ignore the state. And so there's multiple ways to reduce its power over us. And crypto is obviously the most impactful way. But I do think it's worth exploring these others, especially as the beast gets weaker and you can punch it from different angles. I mean, I don't know. That's and the other important point to make is a practical one. Like we said, at the end of the day, we are still tethered to this system. You're hanging out in Texas. I'm hanging out in New York. I got XMR Bazaar going, which is really a dream come true. I built that because I want to be able to buy anything with Monero. I want to be able to hire my electrician with Monero, right? And it's literally getting to that point. But I do still live in New York State. My family is in New York State. I'm not leaving this place completely at any point in my life, even if I maybe partially at some point. So if I'm going to be in this land, I want to fight for this land to be as free as possible. Is the way I look at it. And I do think it could be done, even in a place like New York City. I do think it could happen.
Yeah, and I'll say, Doug,
maybe it just takes somebody as naive as me to continue on that road.
No, I mean I'm pretty open-minded, and I'm sympathetic, and obviously you're taking a multi-pronged approach to these issues. So I consider you an ally and a friend in this. So I don't, like I said, I don't have a dog in the fight. I do believe that whatever approach that we think can benefit us, if it works, that's great. And if it's worth trying, go for it. I'm not. There are a lot of really uncompromising ideologues where I think that there's some like modicum of compromise in the form of a strategy that you can use, as long as you don't like get completely cucked to the system, which happens to some people. But I think that's because their philosophy actually changes. I think we can have strategy as long as it's aligned with the philosophy ultimately, and we don't like cross a line, then it's fine. So again, no, you won't hear any squirming or argumentation.
No, I wasn't. And if I did, I wouldn't mind. I just wanted to honestly,
right. Yeah, I just
get your full take on it and just continue to get that message out, because I think it's an important one, whether people disagree with me or not.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
keep pushing that idea.
Same. I mean, what matters is that we're trying to do what we can to generate as much freedom for everyone as possible, and there's a lot of different avenues to achieve that. I would say, yeah, for me personally, like something that would be beyond the pale of acceptable would just be to try to like be a politician. And I think this was like the Adam Kokesh route, where he's going to try to be run for president and stuff. I don't like this is like the Libertarian Party, in my opinion, also got completely cucked anyway, right? Yeah. So that like there's I don't know, there's gradations of the different strategic approaches you can take for this. But yeah, personally giving up on a political thing, but I do respect other people's attempts to gain freedom as long as they don't end up compromising themselves in the process. That's all.
Like, I think Roger Ver would love to see Monero listed on Coinbase
100%.
here in New York. I think he would be excited about that. I wouldn't think he'd be like, we lost. No, the cypherpunks are losing. I mean, hell yeah. He was
Yeah.
Bitcoin. Roger knew more than anybody. The name of the game is get this in the hands of as many people as we can.
Yeah.
That's the name of the game. Like Johnny Appleseed, get it out there. Even if you have to use their tools and they may, track and trace, but with something like Monero, it just takes away their ability. It's like we're just taking cash out of their bank and disappearing into the night.
That's right. That's the most important thing.
Yeah. Any other topics you want to bring up, man? We're at an hour and 15, 500 live viewers right now. It's been a fantastic evening. I think we've done a good job getting the word out about Roger. Obviously, I think a lot of people listening in to this show have already heard about it, are already amped up about it, but let's continue to grow it. Sign the petition. I think myself, I may have even forgotten. So, guys, I think everybody's very busy and then also very lazy at the same time. We're clicking buttons all day, but the dopamine, you may not get the same dopamine hit from taking that action, but you will once you sign it. So it's worth a little bit of the effort that it takes to type in your name. Go ahead and sign that petition. It is, freerogernow.org. Sterlin, anything you want to get out?
No, I just hope that everyone really understands on a fundamental level what this case means. And if Roger does end up getting fully extradited, he doesn't get the case dismissed, he has to go to trial, goes down all the legal paths and ends up going to prison for the full extent that they want to put him in prison for, then we have to fully understand the repercussions for that for all of us, right? Because what they're essentially saying is, not only do we own you in the context of this country, if you try to leave and get out of here and you've been talking shit about us, right? Or you've been articulating ideas of freedom, then they'll try to come after you anywhere. And this is one of the things that governments do anyway. They have what's called extraterritorial reach in the US, where they'll go around the world trying to arrest people, right? And they'll have their vassal states or their puppet states extradite you back to the US. And it will only get worse, right? We talked about earlier, Doug, you give them an inch and they'll take a mile. Any kind of new law or precedent that they set can potentially be onerous for all of us and for all of our ability to be as free and liberated as possible. So that's why we have to fight for Roger. We have to fight for Ross. We have to fight for Samurai. We have to fight for Tornado Cash, because all this lawfare is just going to get worse and worse, and it's going to be a continuous downward spiral. But like we pointed out, I think there's more and more people who are coming to the cause. Some people are waking up as a result of this. They're seeing the depredations and the degradations of the government, and they want to help and they want to do what they can. So having education and understanding and talking to people about this, even if it's your family at the dinner table, right? Or at home, say, hey, listen, this is what's going on. Check out this website. Check out Monero Talk. Check out Aaron Day's work. Check out Derek's work, and start digging into these problems so that you can arm yourself with the knowledge to help at very least, educate people on what's happening so they can understand how serious this is. I think a lot of people just see you mentioned this earlier, Doug, they see the surface level value of what's happening, right? Or they just see the surface level incident, like, oh, it's a tax crime, punish him, right? He didn't pay his quote unquote fair share. But things get a lot deeper. There's a lot of machinations. There's a lot of state nastiness. And there's a lot of vindictiveness that these guys harbor to certain people with certain mindsets. Even if we go back to Ross's case, when Judge Catherine Forrester sentenced him to the double life sentence plus 40 years, she had a whole soapbox speech about how his ideas are dangerous, about how libertarianism is dangerous. And we don't need these ideas to run amok in society, and then people to enlist those ideas in their own cause for the development of similar kinds of platforms. So she specifically and frankly illegally brought up his ideas as being wrong, as part of the court case. So that tells you how you spoke to this, Doug, how terrified these folks are of seeing liberty prevail, of seeing cryptocurrency and crypto economic tech prevail. They want to stop it at all costs. And really, this is all fueled and catalyzed from our philosophies, from our foundational and fundamental principles. So we have to remember to keep promoting these ideas. Don't be scared. Don't let the chilling effect bog you down. Keep pushing forward at all costs. Talk to people about these ideas and then take action, right? In whatever way that you can, or whatever way that you deem feasible for where you're at in your own life. And it's different for everybody. It goes back into our discussion. Different people want to do different things, but there's plenty that we can do. And it just starts as, it could be as simple as just talking to somebody about the ideas and helping people wake up.
Yeah, we got to normalize it, right? Normalize privacy, normalize digital cash. Cash used to be normal. They're trying to make it abnormal, right? You go and take cash out from the bank and you have to fill out a report if you take a certain amount. They're trying to make it abnormal, but cash should be considered a normal thing. You should be able to freely use it as you wish without having to tell the government how you're using it. And once that goes away, we're going to need a replacement, and digital cash should be considered completely normal and acceptable in society. Shortwave 2009, tip 25 cents. Rito Swap, formerly Haveno Rito, now has 24 trades per day. Yeah, Haveno is a great solution. Like here I am talking about, obviously, don't need to get the discussion again, but yeah, the ideal way to obtain your Monero without KYC, without AML, is using something like Haveno, which works. It's just a matter of more of us using it every day. XMR Bazaar, same theme. All the tools exist, and they're really they're user friendly at this point. Even the decentralized ones like Haveno, it's not that bad. You download a piece of software, and it's like you're using local, like a decentralized version of local Monero. We got another tip over here. Lord Gaines tip 25. By far, my favorite way to obtain Monero is through commerce. 100%. Also, my favorite way to sell Monero, right, is through commerce, to actually spend it. It feels amazing. You earn Monero. Nobody knows. It's just between you and the person paying you. Cost a fraction of a cent to send. And when you spend it, same thing. There is no better feeling. Then we have some guy here talking about how in Argentina he uses Cuevas. I love Argentina for that aspect. I hope the Cuevas don't go away. Basically, for people who don't know what those are, it's kind of like black market money exchangers. And so he's saying that's how he gets his Monero. He turns his pesos into USDT in these Cuevas, which is amazing. I've been there. I've used them. And then he goes on a DEX and changes it into XMR. So beautiful to see. Unfortunately, we don't have that really going in New York. There's no Cuevas in New York. And I don't know, maybe I got to get that going. Bring the Cuevas to New York. I don't know how long I'd last. I don't think I'd last very long on that one. But Sterlin, man, we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciate your time and everything you're doing. And I'm sure I'll see you on the circuit. I'll see you at the next conference or, liberty loving thing. If not sooner than Pork Fest, I'm pretty sure I'll see you at Pork Fest. You think you'll be there this year?
Yeah, I think there's a pretty high chance. So far on my roadmap is Derek. I talked about Derek a bit. The greater reset, actually now the People's Reset, is happening at the end of January, right? So be in Mexico for that, and then maybe gonna do a talk in Prospera, for Vitaly at the Free City Summit. Yep.
Okay.
I'm gonna do some traveling, and then after that, maybe start thinking about Pork Fest again. I loved Pork Fest last year. That was
dude, you were such a big part of the Monero tent too. I greatly appreciate that. As we were talking about last year, this year we want to ramp it up. Pork Fest is the same time as MoneroCon this year, so I guess you're not going to MoneroCon, or you don't know yet. And I honestly, I got some family things going on here, good family things where I got to stay close to home. So I'm leaning towards Pork Fest, but I'm thinking we really ramp it up this year. I know Aaron Day is interested in collaborating with us and helping us make it a bigger thing. Maybe like a Monerotopia at Pork Fest. We could have some talks going on, some more than we had last year. I think it'd be cool if we stream the MoneroCon talks at PorcFest. Right, we could have a nice screen set up for people that want to come watch some of the MoneroCon talks, because they'll be able to hear from the devs. Right, they'll be able to hear from Luke Parker at PorcFest. Just throwing it out there. I think that could be a pretty cool thing, and some other things maybe we could do with making the privacy coin tent a larger thing at PorcFest this year.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. That sounds amazing. And I'm leaning also toward PorcFest, unless I have to be in Europe for some event or some other reason. Then that would be the only reason if I go to. I love MoneroCon. Don't get me wrong; it was a really good time, and I really like the Institute of Crypto Anarchy there as well. I think there's been some changes,
amazing.
but that place is amazing.
Yeah. So we'll talk more about that offline. And yeah, man, thank you for everything. I'll close it out here.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Doug. Appreciate you having me on, man. This was a really good conversation. It's so important and critical.
All right, buddy. Cheers.
See you, brother.
Yep.
Monero Talk is sponsored by Cake Wallet, a trustless open source wallet that gives you the keys to your crypto. Invoice, donate, and trade your Monero with peace of mind, piece of cake. And by StealthyX, an instant exchange where privacy is a top concern. Go to stealthyx.io to instantly exchange between Monero and 450 plus assets without having to create an account or register, and with no limits, making StealthyX a simple way to purchase Monero with crypto anonymously. Monero Talk is also made possible from contributions by viewers and listeners like you, and supporting us is easier than ever by typing in monerotalk.crypto in your monero.com or Cake Wallet send address field to send us a tip.